to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
To Anti-Tyranny News Radio here on UCY.tv. Thank you for joining me this evening. Gonna dive into this healthcare bill. Couple headlines I have here. McConnell signals doubts about Obamacare vote. Now talk of them may have to work with Dems. And conservatives revolt over talk of keeping tax. But the first article I'm going to get into is this one out of the Washington Examiner. Rand Paul is going to war with his own party. Senator Rand Paul has not been quiet about his displeasure with the Republican health care bill as it was written, saying many times that he can't vote for it unless it looks more like an actual repeal of Obamacare. Paul has decried Republicans for dropping the essence of their previous repeal and replace mantra for another big government approach which promises an infusion of more federal money into the healthcare system. Now that Paul has voiced support for separating the repeal effort from the replace effort in two different bills, he has distinguished himself even further from the rest of his caucus as one of the few remaining small government pro-liberty Republicans. I think another thing Rand Paul has learned, I think something that his dad already knew and kind of was going to let Rand figure that out for himself, is that, you know, it seemed like Rand wanted to play along with the Republicans' game as long as it got him something, that he actually seen actual changes. What he figured out is you help them, and then when you try to actually push something that's pro-freedom, pro-liberty, small government, it doesn't go anywhere, even with their own party that claims to be for that. Commenting on the current bill, he said, "We have nearly $200 billion in insurance bailouts. Does anybody remember us complaining that Obamacare had insurance bailouts?" He continued, "Now there are Republicans getting so weak-kneed, they're saying, oh, we're afraid to repeal the taxes. What happened to these people? They all were for repealing Obamacare. Now that there's virtually no one left and continuing every time you add more federal money, more spending for the big government Republicans, it offends the conservatives. Paul also said on Cavuto, you could say to the moderates, we're going to give you more spending over here, but it's going to be on a separate bill. And then you say to conservatives like me that are worried about the debt and think that we're going to ruin the country, I can't vote for all that spending. So if you want my vote, clean up the repeal. Don't pull all the Christmas ornaments and billion-dollar goodies on it. Just give me repeal. And if the Democrats and big government Republicans insist on Christmas ornaments that cost $45 billion and $100 billion, it will be on a different bill. His implication is clear. He wants to reduce the federal government's role in health care, as he and others in his party previously promised to do, and is therefore a conservative, and those Republicans supporting the bill are not. And if you remember when his dad ran and for the Republican nomination, and you had Romney up there, Romney was talking repeal and replace, repeal and replace. Well, if you remember, most libertarians were like, replace? How about we repeal and don't replace? Oh, we got to replace it with something. No, how about you just take restrictions off to make it easier and cheaper? That's what free markets will take care of. And no one listened, and therefore a while the Republican held Congress was actually passing repeals, just repeals, knowing that Obama, of course, wasn't going to sign it. But now that they have someone that would sign a repeal, they're not trying it. It's for a lot of these, Republicans. It's more about the power's in our hand now. Let's make it our idea and put the things we like. Like, oh, we'll make sure no funding goes to any type of business that does abortions. They'll do stuff like that, but then they'll give breaks to other type of organizations, and it'll always be, one hand's going to get more than the other, because again, it's about power. It's not about taking the power away from government. They are government. They want the power. I'm going to dive into a Ron Paul Liberty report. This one's a Mythbusters. Government healthcare is ready for hospice, and we'll cover a little bit what he talks about in that, and then I got another article on this I want to cover. So let's go ahead and dive into this real quick.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning into the Liberty Report. Today is Friday, and this is the day we do Mythbusters. Our co-host is Chris Rosini. And Chris, what do we have on our schedule for today?
Good morning, Dr. Paul. Today we're going to talk about government-managed health care. They Decades ago, politicians and their politically connected corporations began their attack on free market medicine. And as regulations and subsidies have gone up, so have our bills and the wait times to actually get care. We recently came across an older article by Hans Hermann Hoppe, and it still applies today. So let's talk about how to go back to the free market. Number one, Hoppe recommends that we abolish all licensing for medical schools, hospitals, pharmacies, and medical doctors. Now, that may seem extreme to most people today, but please talk about how important it would be to actually get rid of license.
Yes, it would be a big issue. And a lot of people consider this very, very radical. Now, Hans Hoppe is a libertarian and a purist on everything that he does. And it was even Milton Friedman that made the point early on, many years ago, that licensing is very bad and even doctors shouldn't have to go through licensing. So I think it's hard for a lot of people to understand because they've been conditioned for the last 100 years that government has to be there to take care of us. And what would happen? Would anybody get to practice medicine? No, the only people that would get to practice medicine are the people who the patients will go to. I mean, they don't, they're not likely to go to the barber to get brain surgery done, this sort of thing. I mean, there's a little bit of common sense, but there would also be, if you had no licensing of doctors, you would have people that would monitor doctors. There would be lists and you would know qualification. Besides, most people find their doctor from somebody else, somebody in the family or a neighbor, and you check him out. Do you like him? Is he good? And where does he practice? Where did he graduate? That is probably 99% of it. It has nothing to do with the fact that, oh, yeah, he has a Texas license, and that makes him, a very authentic, and he's not going to do any harm. Now, I don't think the licensing has had anything to do with helping people pick their doctor. But, it wasn't always like this. And the one thing that we can date this to is in 1910, there was a lot of complaints prior to that time that, there were too many medical schools and some weren't real good. There were too many doctors and government had to be involved. So they had this Carnegie Foundation investigation, which was supported by the medical profession, the AMA, and many others. They were going out and check on this and then write a report, which was called the Flexner Report. And as a result of that, they cut the number of hospitals in half and cut the doctors in half. You said, well, that must be good. They must have all been very lousy. But it turned out that there was more competition then, even though there weren't a lot of women and minorities in the medical schools. At least they were allowed to compete. They had their own medical schools, and there were women, and they were the ones that got closed down. And that led to problems that we've had for a long time. But they claim that the main reason you have licensing is to protect the patient. Or any kind of licensing, you have to have licensing for real estate brokers so you don't get cheated. Well, you don't have to have a license to know how to sell real estate. It's all protectionism. And the medical profession is guilty of that as well. The doctors are involved. The insurance companies are involved. The drug companies are involved. Government do-gooders were involved. And they just believed that you had to have government there to protect the patients. But it was really there to protect the monopoly. They couldn't have had a monopoly if they wouldn't have had the government involved. Because at that time, homeopathy was accepted. Natural cures were accepted. And going from homeopathy to allopathy, they went from, more natural cures for medicine to medicine, drugs, and all this. And the one was excluded at the expense of the other. And there should be room for both, is the way I figure. But it isn't surprising that drug companies had something to do with this. And just think of the explosion of the use of drugs in medicine since that. And some have been wonderful and some have been good, but some have not been very helpful. And there's been, a lot of shenanigans going on. And this, of course, has ushered in the age of Obamacare. One time there was a lot more freedom of choice and solutions would come from the free market. And now we ended up with a horrendous problem. And it just seemed to be at an impasse with Obamacare. They can't get rid of it and they don't know what they're going to do with it. what we're talking about here today is approaching this from a pure principle of the free market, which we don't expect to come about real soon. But we should defend it, that it can solve the problem, has existed before, and people should have more confidence that they can pick a doctor, and there will be people that would help. There would be research groups and people who would guide people into picking hospitals and picking their doctor. But most of the time, people want, I want the stamp of approval from the government. Well, consumer groups can give you a stamp of approval on what's going on just as well as anything that the government does. So people shouldn't be frightened about it, and they can think of it in other terms. I mentioned real estate, but why is it that, plumbing and all these organizations, you have to have a license or you can't come in and do the job? Well, you change in washers and things which are minor. Why do you have to have a license to do that? And the major jobs could be sorted out too. So I would think people should really reconsider. There was a time when I thought, we have to have licensing. Of course, I got converted away from that pretty early on. And in medicine, we could survive without licensing. Things would be a lot better. Patients would have more choices, and there would be restraints placed on them by market forces rather than government regulation. Because just look at what we have today. We have as many problems today with physicians doing bad things as we've ever had, and yet we have so many regulations. So people should consider the fact that licensing is totally unnecessary.
Yes. The next suggestion for heading back to the free market from Hoppe is one that we've actually covered not too long ago with the EpiPen debacle, and that is to abolish the FDA. If you can now talk about how the FDA hinders innovation, increases costs, and actually restricts production of life-saving medicines and devices.
Yes, and this has been pretty well proven, and people are starting to come around to realize this, especially since there's been much written about the collusion of the FDA with the drug industry. There's a revolving door. If they're in the FDA, then they get a very good job, with drug industries afterwards. It makes a big difference. If a drug is approved by the FDA, if there's an anticipation of it, and then all of a sudden they didn't do it or they did do it, big bucks are involved. And when governments have that much power, there's a lot of shenanigans that go on. It's not always done with the highest intent, and because it means a lot of money is involved. The FDA, came in at the beginning of the last century, just like that Flexner report that destroyed, the private market. The FDA came in 1906, and yet it's grown exponentially. It's much worse than it was at the beginning, but it's very much involved. And now it's intertwined with the insurance companies, and it's just an outrage what happens under today's conditions. We have a system of corporatism. We don't have socialized medicine, but we don't have free markets. People seem to, and even the Obama administration seemed to accept corporatism, which is a slightly milder form of fascism. And that was the purpose, was to try to provide medical care and pretend that it was going to be better, but we wouldn't have to have socialism. But drug companies have to listen to the FDA, and like you mentioned in the question, it sometimes delays things a whole lot. And there have been studies about how many thousands of people died because there was a pretty good drug that was delayed 1, 2, 3, 4 years. In a free market, what happens if you're dealing with a drug and there's a pretty good chance it's going to work, you don't have to wait for these years and years of testing, safe and effective, and the politics of it all. So this is delays that wouldn't be necessary. What would happen is if a drug company, a reputable drug company came out, we're working on a drug and the preliminary studies, it does really help this particular cancer, even in dire straits. If the company goes and the doctor goes to the patient and say, this is a test drug, it's not proven, and if you want to be in this test, there's a chance, but there's no guarantees. If you guarantee people, if in the free market, if you guarantee, this is a cancer cure, and you have people like that, and this is going to take care of it, and falsely, promise, that would be wrong. But this would speed things up. It could speed them up by years and years. And of course, the more competition involved in that, the better. Right now, it is a horrible mess with Obamacare. Anybody who wants to go it on their own in their medical care and decides, I'm going to buy my drugs, I'm sick and tired of this insurance and all, you might walk in, and I've had the experience, walk in, and they say, your copay is $10, and this is the medication. And they might not find the paperwork. And I said, just let me pay for it. I did this not too long ago because there was a little bit of mix-up. Let me just buy the medication, and it was for a member of the family, and it was $1,000. It's just unbelievable. And that what they want to do so often is they want to push the collusion of the drug industry into the insurance business, and it's very, very damaging to the marketplace. The FDA does not protect us against bad drugs. The government causes a lot more harm, a lot more expensive, a lot more delays, and really a lot more deaths. Another thing that annoys me with the FDA was traditionally you get the stamp of approval of the FDA. The doctors aren't going to have the information to test it, and it's been very tempting to say, FDA approved, they must have done a lot of testing, they say it's okay. Then you do it, and 5 years later, 10 years later, big mistake, then there's a bunch of lawsuits. So it's encouraged doctors not to be as vigilant as they should be and be suspicious of these drugs because there's way too many. And there was a time when I was a little bit more naive, and I thought, they wouldn't do anything just for profit. Yeah, I've sort of softened my stand on that. I think they do a lot in the drug industry just for profit. Just look at the EpiPen fiasco there and how they maneuver government and get their monopolies. So, yes, they do something for their pocketbook. Not every one of them, but there's a bunch. It's driven. And it's not driven by honest profits. It's driven by deceitful and fraudulent profits. And that's why I don't like the FDA.
Yes, next necessity to head back to free markets is to deregulate the health insurance industry. Unfortunately, health insurance has been turned on its head. It can hardly even be called insurance anymore. In fact, Peter Schiff recently tweeted something I'm going to read. It was very enlightening, and this is what he said. He said, health insurance is what healthy people buy in case they get sick. It's not what sick people buy to pay their medical bills. Please talk about that, Doc.
Well, this is what has happened. They try to force everybody into it, and it hasn't worked. People are rebelling because it costs too much because they're making people who are healthy and should be able to get cheap insurance. So if you're 18 or 20 in very good health and you don't smoke and you don't drink, the insurance company wants to give you a policy that in the free market would be renewable for life. This is quite a bit different than creating this system of government and insurance. And the insurance companies liked Obamacare, except when the mandates came or the price controls come. But the mandates were that, if somebody leaves one job and goes someplace else, they have to change insurance, which is wrong. Your insurance should go with the patient, not with your job. So they go on and I understand that you've had such and such, and you've had diabetes and this sort of thing. So we're going to rate you or not give you insurance. And that wouldn't happen in the free market. But what they're saying, you must give. And it's sort of like us living on the Gulf Coast, that we don't have to buy wind insurance until we see the storm in the Gulf, and then we worry about hurricanes. Well, nobody does that. You don't go buy car insurance after you have your accident, and you don't buy car insurance to take care of maintenance for your gasoline and oil and little things like that. And that's what medicine is all about. They say, we pay for everything. We take care of office calls. You need to get the doctor-patient much closer, and the doctor and the patient should look each other in the eye and say, you come to my office and I'm going to charge you $50, $100, or whatever it is. Instead of saying, we'll check on the insurance company. And then they go and then they start fighting over what they're allowed to do. Once they set this, it's idealistic, but then they run into trouble. The cost goes up. It becomes bureaucratic, and nobody is happening. And they try to stick the bills on the people who aren't sick. And so it isn't. Shift is absolutely right. This is not insurance. It's prepaid services by taking money from one healthy group and taking care of somebody else. And they say, well, that's inhumane. Somebody has to take care of them. Well, where did they do it before? How did they do it before Obamacare? And I tell people I practiced medicine before they had Medicare and Medicaid, and there wasn't this kind of a problem. So I think there wasn't a problem that created this monster. It had the special interests. The medical professions won a monopoly, the drug companies, the insurance companies, and they all came together and they created the problem. And then we have this huge bureaucracy in medicine that is very costly. So it is a consequence of our bad laws. And one of the most important things that I just mentioned, I think, is people should have a much better choice on insurance. It should be deregulated. You should be able to buy it in any state, and you should be able to get the insurance when you're young. An insurance company then should be able to give it to you and guarantee it. But if you change jobs, then you have this monster. But the tax code did this because the corporations wanted the deductions. But if you're an independent and you want to do it yourself, no, you don't get the deductions. And even now, you can't even get in if you're not part of the system. Then you can't fit into the insurance programs. So it's until Obama tried to correct it, but he made it much worse by intimidating people, making the wrong people pay, not let the market work, and not let freedom of choice be there. So it's a tragic mess. Unfortunately, even if this knowledge were accepted by the majority of people in Washington, say that's the way you have to move, it's not going to happen, unfortunately, because once you give people services which you come across for the majority of, oh, I didn't have this before and I have it now. We are not going to put up. We have a right to this, and we demand that we keep this. Politically, there's not going to be any answer. But I tell you what, it's insolvent. This whole system is insolvent. There's $128 trillion of unfunded liabilities, mostly in Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. And there's reasons why that's not going to continue because population is going down and expenses are going up, and the predictions are always wrong. So we have a ways to go before the solution. I think we'll have to face the medical care system a lot, when the crash comes and have to have a decision. That's why I encourage people to really look into alternative care and individual care. There's still a few options left where you can get private care under these circumstances, but it's going to be more difficult as time goes on.
Right. And finally, Dr. Paul from HAPA, it's a suggestion back to freedom that most people do not want to hear, and that's to get rid of Medicare and Medicaid. And that's never an easy sell, especially after many decades of being subsidized by the government. Nobody wants to hear that it's heading towards ruin. However, the facts are the facts, and since they've been implemented, healthcare has been in decline. So if you could finish the show on why it's important to get rid of these two socialist programs.
Well, we have to because they're totally insolvent. The number of people employed in medical care now, and just recently the job report showed there was a tremendous increase in medical jobs. And they didn't separate them from government and private. But even if it's private, it's government because they're probably working on insurance forms and the bureaucracy. So it's insolvent. They can't provide it. It's bureaucratic. The people are unhappy. They're getting angry. And there will come a time when something will have to be done. So I think that people have to believe and listen to people who can take a position and say, we should have never done this. How about this simple argument, which is so unwelcome? Where do you get the authority, moral authority, to steal from somebody who takes care of themselves or is in good health and take it and subsidize somebody else who drinks too much and has cirrhosis of the liver and he wants a liver transplant? And you are obligated by law to take money from that person and take care of somebody else. So that is not going to work. Eventually, it's going to stop. But people believe they have a right to medical care, And that's why they're not going to give up on this easily. And yet most people know, oh yeah, it's bankrupt, it's insolvent. It's how long is it going to last? Nobody knows exactly, because as long as people keep taking our dollars that we just print, I guess we're going to limp along. The quality of medical care is going down, and that is the big thing. The doctor-patient relationship has been destroyed by this. One of the motivations that many of us had for going into medicine was the uniqueness and the excitement of having something very special, a doctor-patient relationship. And this should be, honored and respected, but today there isn't. There's a relationship now between drug companies and insurance companies, and it's sterile, and it's so difficult. And still the number of people getting good care doesn't go up. It actually goes down, and it becomes more bureaucratic. We have a good example of what happens, in medical care, because we do have something that was universally government care, and that was care for the veterans. And everybody that runs for Congress and presidency, and Trump, we have to help the veterans. I even said the same thing. We drag them in, they get injured, and they don't get care. But they're in a system that doesn't work. The veteran hospitals, it doesn't work. So that should be an example of why we should change it. As far as taking care of that problem, we ought to just give them an insurance policy and let them go get private care. Probably had a lot less cost than running government hospitals. But unfortunately, is not the case. But this boils down to the special interest that I mentioned on how 100 years ago it was moved to get a monopoly control by all the special interests. And also, the moral principle is that whether or not medical care is a right. It's not a right. You have a right to your life. You have a right to your liberty. You have a right to your property that you earn. And that is it. You don't have a right to take something from somebody else because you need it. And medical care has been very susceptible because it's emotional, and they can't quite, and I understand it. I happen to be in medicine. I want to take care of people who are sick. That's why I don't like this type of program. But it's susceptible because people get emotional and say, oh yeah, we have to do it. But we ought to look at it on principle, the morality of it all, the moral right, the practicality of it, because it doesn't work. And of course, you could have the old-fashioned argument, there is no authority in the Constitution anywhere that gives the federal government the authority to run medical care for the whole country. And those few principles would solve our problems, but it's not going to happen this week. Let's just keep working on it so people understand and have confidence that freedom does work. I do want to thank everybody for tuning in. And Chris, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thanks very much, Dr. Paul.
And good. And to the viewing audience, please come back to the Liberty Report soon.
Ron Paul Liberty Report, RonPaulLibertyReport.com, and Ron Paul Liberty Report on YouTube. Check them out. Subscribe. Now, one of the last things you brought up there was the VA, and that's something that I've been saying for a long time. And my grandfather was in World War II, and growing up, because of his health issues, having to deal with the VA, it's even as a young person, I asked, why can't he just go to the regular hospital? And, well, because, they get their health care through the government. And, because they were at war. And I'm thinking, but don't older people get government health care when they get older? They can still go to a regular hospital. And, that's when the answers started getting a little bit more confusing. And really, it was something I seen early off. The only thing I could really think of at the time, being younger, I was like, well, maybe it's because they deal with more of, amputation, and maybe they deal with more of, you know, asbestos, or, they deal with a lot of these issues that are pretty unique to a soldier. That's why they need the VA. They're specialized experts in a lot of that stuff. Yeah, that's why. And the older I got, the more I realized, well, no, because there's amputees all the time that don't go to a VA. Hold on. There's people that have dealt with asbestos that weren't in the military. Oh, they were mechanics. Oh, so then there's probably people out there that can deal in that. And it just, it just kept going on and on. And, more I started understanding the world around me, and more educated I became. It really came down to, it seems to me like it's a way to save $1. Where at a hospital, they're going to go, well, we could try this. This might save them. Where at the VA, they'll be like, we tried this and this. It didn't work. We tried. Where there might be a amount or a level of care that they're willing to give, but highly specialized treatments maybe not so much. Now I do think it's somewhere in the middle. The VA, the people there want to do as much as they can. I think the VA is underfunded, therefore they can only do what they have the ability to do. Now, I have heard some stories of late that VA is getting a little bit more lenient in the sense that things that they can't do there at the VA, they're actually starting to send more people out to more appointments and more specialized care than they used to. But I agree with Ron Paul. Why wouldn't you just give them a insurance policy to go to whatever hospital they choose? There's hospitals that I won't go to, and there's hospitals I will, and hospitals be a good second choice, or, in that emergency, I would be willing to go to there or there, just as long as it's not there. And, those are choices that we have the ability to choose, but they don't. They have the VA. Or they can go ahead and get their own health insurance, which I'm sure would be high unless they could do it through a company. Me personally, if I was in that position, I would do whatever I could to try to get insurance outside of what the VA will offer you. But hopefully we can see, maybe a movement away from that. But right now we got government so far up healthcare's butt that it doesn't really matter what way you turn right now. Government's going to be involved. And that was a big scam back when the insurance companies were created. There, part of that was, well, if you get really hurt, it's going to cost a lot, and you probably won't have that money to pay for insurance, and we'll cover it. Well, that works as long as it's healthier people. And because, well, insurance is a business, they need to make money. They slowly, raise the rates, which here and there, it's like how government gets power. They do it in slow progression. And at the same time, the you know doctors and um, hospitals and everything start raising their rates because look, now there's a pool of money every time one of the people in that whole pool gets sick that we can dip into. So on top of them raising prices and the insurance company raising rates, you went from a point where you could have the doctor come to your house and at least, check you out if you need to go into the hospital or something. We'll talk about that once we look you over real quick. Make sure it's nothing too bad. Um, and being able to pay for that out of pocket, where now you have people that go to the doctor and come out having to pay still out of pocket. But on top of that, they have an insurance policy that they've been paying on. It's there. There's a giant circle that now it's almost like it's a catch-22 because you got so many things that are causes and effects, and it kind of goes full circle. Um, Now, once insurance companies were made and doctors and, the medical field started raising prices, realizing, hey, we can get more money. Um, then on top of that, government's involvement in um, student loans and things like that and student aid, um, colleges started raising, you know, their tuition. So now you got kids paying a whole bunch of money. Remember, not all of them finish at the top of their class. So you can actually, potentially have a crappy doctor that barely got by. Might have even had someone do their homework for them. Um, they do go through a lot of training, but I'm saying, that doesn't mean that they're all good. Definitely when it comes down to actual practice. But they're all paying a crap load of money. They're all going to charge a crap load of money. So now it doesn't even matter free market wise whether you go to the best doctor or the worst doctor. Maybe the best doctor might be more for the simple fact that he might have got a better position. But what about not quite the best, but pretty damn good compared to the bad? They might be charging around the same price. And anymore too, you also have it where everything's pharmaceutical. We'll try this, we'll try that. They say that's what it's for. That's the FDA approved it, and that's what it's approved for. So it must do the job for that. Side effects. When it comes out, it didn't really help, but it did have the side effects. Join the lawsuit, and you might get a couple bucks. It's a big mess. And really, again, I agree with Rand Paul that we should split, the repeal and replace apart. It needs to be repealed. Worry about replace if you actually come up with something more free market just to deregulate it. I think that would be a good idea. Um, Another article here. I want to cover this real quick before we move on. This one out of the Hill. Conservatives revolt over talk of keeping Obamacare tax. Conservative groups are warning GOP senators against keeping an Obamacare tax on investment income in their health care bill, an idea that has gained some traction among lawmakers. GOP lawmakers have floated keeping Obamacare's 3.8% net investment income tax to help pay for more generous health care subsidies for low income people. Democrats criticized an earlier version of the Senate's health care bill for eliminating the tax because it generally applies to high earners. But prominent conservatives argue Democrats will criticize the bill regardless of what happens with the tax. They say the tax is harmful to economic growth and should be repealed. This tax, just like any tax increase, is an it's an anathema to conservatives as it suppresses economic growth and opportunity throughout our nation. Club for Growth President David McIntosh said in a statement Wednesday, under no circumstance should the NIIT be included in any forthcoming Republican repeal bill. Repeal and replace. That's what it should say, not repeal. It's not just repeal. It should just be repeal. Obamacare's net investment income tax applies to individuals making more than $200,000 and married couples making more than $250,000. The tax falls on forms of income that include capital gains, dividends, and interest. It is one of a number of taxes that Democrats enacted to help pay for Obamacare. Other revenue provisions include a Medicare surtax on high earners and taxes on the medical device, prescription drug, and health insurance industries, among other things. Republicans have long disliked the investment tax. The Obamacare repeal bill the House passed in May would retroactively repeal the tax to the start of 2017. And the draft bill Senate Republicans released last month would also retroactively do away with the tax. But the initial version of the Senate bill did not have enough votes to pass, and several GOP senators have suggested that they would be open to keeping the net investment income tax if it would allow lawmakers to bolster healthcare subsidies. We want to address the issue of ensuring lower income citizens are in a position to buy plans that actually provide them appropriate health care, Senator Bob Corker from Tennessee told reporters last week. Outside conservative groups, however, are pushing back against the idea. Before the initial version of the Senate bill was unveiled, more than 40 free market groups and activists wrote a letter to Senate Finance Committee Chairman Orrin Hatch urging lawmakers to repeal all of Obamacare's taxes. Representatives from groups that signed the letter say they are troubled by the recent decisions about dropping the repeal of the net investment income tax, since they view repeal of the tax as a way to help boost the economy. Cutting the capital gains tax gets you growth, said Americans for Tax Reform President Grover Norquist. He called keeping the investment tax an economically illiterate bad idea. Taxpayers Protection Alliance President David Williams said that failing to repeal the investment tax would cause investors to delay selling assets and would discourage more entry into the stock market. Democrats have been repeatedly attacking Republicans on health care by arguing that their legislation would increase health care costs for poor Americans to provide tax cuts to the rich. The message may be resonating as polls have found that more people oppose the Senate's draft bill than support it. The optics of repealing the investment tax are problematic for Republicans, and scrapping the idea could help to win over moderate GOP senators. But conservatives stress that keeping the tax is bad policy and won't get any Democrats to back the bill. Democrats will pocket the concession and continue demagoguing tax cuts for the wealthy as the tax debate begins, only more emboldened for having tasted blood, the Wall Street Journal's right-leaning editorial board wrote earlier this week. Conservatives also say failing to repeal the investment tax in the health care bill could make tax reform more challenging. If lawmakers want to repeal the tax as part of tax reform instead of in health care legislation, they would likely need to find a way to offset the $172 billion in revenue losses that the Joint Committee on Taxation estimates would result from the provision's elimination. And if lawmakers opt against repealing the investment tax in tax reform as well, their cuts to tax rates won't actually be as big as they look. In our opinion, it would be a mistake to throw away any opportunity to get a head start on a tax reform. National Taxpayers Union President Pete Sepp said. He added that the investment tax doesn't only affect wealthy people because it wasn't indexed to inflation, so it will affect more and more people over time. The chairman of the Congressional Tax Writing Committee are among the biggest proponents of repealing the investment tax in health care legislation. Hatch and House Ways and Means Committee Chairman Kevin Brady have said they want all the Obamacare taxes repealed in a health care bill. And again, that was from the Hill. You can read the rest of that there. Now, I made the point, other people have made the point before. Once you get something like this passed, Obamacare, it takes more than what most people have to try to get rid of something like that. You just can't get rid of it. It's easy for them to pass these laws, but it's always hard for them, to ever get rid of them. And when they do, all they do is change the name, change a couple little things in it, but they never change the actual, the framework of it. It still ends up doing bad, and if anything, they make it worse. Okay, I'm gonna move on here. I want to get away from healthcare here before it gives me healthcare problems. I wanted to cover this one thing. I don't know if I can find it too fast or not. Okay, sorry. Give me a second here. Okay. I wanted to cover a little bit of this because CNN, and I'm not usually someone that goes out there and tries to go directly after mainstream media. Um, I do call out mainstream media as a whole, but I tend not to try to target any of them. I think they're all bad. They all tend to be in it for the almighty dollar, not actual journalism or anything. Um, it's one thing to want to get paid for the work you do. It's another thing to turn it into stardom. Um, there's other ways to find your actual stardom. Um, these mainstream so-called journalists um, and talking heads, they you would think they were in a movie or something, and then they end up being in movies, acting as themselves as a reporter. Um, but CNN, they're constantly getting caught. Lies, other mainstream media too, not just CNN. But something CNN did lately that triggered the hashtag CNN blackmail. And being a journalist, one thing that really upset me a while back is so-called activists, journalists, or whatever the hell they want to claim themselves to be. I'm sure journalists, activists second. Um, on multiple media sites start publishing um, gun owners' names and addresses. Um, a lot of people remember all that happening, and me going, someone that hasn't harmed anybody, hasn't broken the law, um, simply exercising their right, now has their privacy exposed to the world to be attacked. Doesn't seem like a noble journalistic thing to do, and that peed me off. Well, what CNN lately has done with this hashtag CNN blackmail, everybody has probably seen the little GIF meme or GIF meme, however you pronounce it, of Donald Trump, laying the smackdown on a person that had a CNN logo over their head. And basically, CNN tracked down the person that supposedly made that. And in an article, basically warned him one last time, you told us you're sorry, you won't do it again. We'll keep your information private, but if you do or say anything or do anything again, we have the ability to release your private information, basically blackmailing him to keep his mouth shut. Well, now this has come out. CNN, they are on their death march, their death walk. This is a network that I don't know many people that trust, even people that would sit there and, like, if it was on, they would just sit there and stare and watch it and listen. Go, I don't believe anything they say. It's just interesting what they say. They just haven't had the credit. Now, that doesn't mean everybody, I've had, relatives that talk about, oh, I seen this on CNN. Not me. So, I really think that CNN is on its last leg. But I kind of want to get more into the story. I have a clip here from Stefan Molyneux talking about CNN threatens Reddit user for exercising free speech. Hashtag CNN blackmail. So let's go ahead and dive into this.
CNN kind of like the geeky virgin in those horror movies of endless predetermined disaster who sort of says, you go for help, I'll follow the bloody footprints to my doom. CNN has just made the biggest and most catastrophic error and has finally opened themselves up to the just retaliation that they have courted, for so long indeed. They have chosen the name of those who will bring them down. They are legion. They are anonymous. They are relentless. Hi, Paul. Hi, 4chan. Hope you guys are doing well. Would you like some jolt? I think you might need it because really the feigned piece is over. And now the phony war is over. And it is time to dig in and start getting things done. This from CNN.com tonight. The Reddit user who initially claimed credit for President Donald Trump's tweet that showed Trump tackling CNN issued an apology Tuesday for the video and other offensive content he posted 1 day after CNN identified the man behind the account and attempted to make contact with him. All right, so I'm going to just break this up so everyone can sort of follow along. So let's just say you're a bit of a shit poster, right? You enjoy making funny memes and so on, and you take this 2007 tackle that Donald Trump did on Vince McMahon at some WrestleMania event, and you put CNN logos on it. Kind of funny, cozy 20 minutes of work. You post it, a couple of people laugh, and move on to whatever is enjoyable next on the internet. And then you find out that Donald Trump, someone in his team or him, they reposted it with a bit of music and so on, and it kind of became a really big thing. And you're like, wow, that's pretty cool. And you move on with your day. And then, well, I guess in your private email, you get a message from CNN saying, we've tracked you down, we know who you are, and we want to talk to you. Well, I guess that makes free speech a whole bit less fun now, doesn't it? And that, of course, is the entire point. To move on with the CNN article, Reddit user Han A, not his real name, but Han A Solo, first shared the GIF last Wednesday of Trump pummeling a wrestler with CNN's logo imposed on his face. Shouldn't that be superimposed? Anyway, goes on. CNN could find no earlier instance of the GIF. The GIF was later edited into a video with sound and tweeted by the president on Sunday. On Reddit, Han A. Solo took credit for inspiring the tweet. Soon after, Han A. Solo's other posts on Reddit, some of which included racist and anti-Semitic imagery, quickly circulated on social media. And then there's this big apology and so on. You can look the article up yourself. After posting his apology, Han A. Solo called CNN's K-File and confirmed his identity. In the interview, Han A. Solo sounded nervous about his identity being revealed and asked to not be named out of fear for his personal safety and for the public embarrassment it would bring to him and his family. So that's important. See, CNN, very, very concerned about violence against people, and if this guy's name got out, I mean, you know what would happen. Like all the black-clad, skinny-jean leftists with lots of time on their hands would find this guy very easily if they published his name and city or whatever, just his name maybe. They would find him, and his employers would be contacted, and his wife's employers would be contacted, and his children's teachers would be contacted, and they would just death threats would pour in. You see, they're very concerned about violence and threats against journalists that might come out of a silly GIF of a desktop that wasn't even real to begin with. They're very, very concerned about the potential for instigating violence. So obviously they'd never, ever, ever want to reveal the name of this person, because it seems to me that would be a pretty clear clarion call for unholy levels of crap to descend upon this guy's entire existence for the rest of said existence. The article on CNN went on to say, CNN is not publishing Han A. Solo's name because he is a private citizen. See, not there, you should stop. Now, the reason why this guy deleted all of his posts, I would assume, is partly because he was contacted by CNN, and also because he was contacted by CNN, he realized that he left a trail of breadcrumbs across the internet that led to his front door, and so he probably didn't want to figure out exactly how they jumped from thread to him, so he just deleted everything because he was concerned that other people, CNN has a big incentive, but other people might find a way to figure out who he is as well. So, CNN is not publishing Han A. Solo's name because he is a private citizen who has issued an extensive statement of apology, showed his remorse by saying he has taken down all his offending posts, and because he said he is not going to repeat this ugly behavior on social media again. Now, that is a very, very interesting way of putting it. We're not going to publish your name and destroy your life because you're a private citizen. Now, that should be it. That should be it. But they put a bunch of caveats, right? Not publishing your name because you've really, really groveled and apologized. You've taken down the posts which we find offensive, and because you've promised not to do this stuff again. So that's why we're not going to dox you and publish your name, because you have complied with our wishes and taken down stuff we find offensive. CNN goes on to say, in addition, he said his statement could serve as an example to others not to do the same. That's interesting as well. We got this guy, we dug and found this guy, and we could publish his name, but we're not going to because he's groveled and complied with everything we want. And just in case you didn't understand, we're just going to point out, he said his statements could serve as an example to others not to do the same. No funny memes, everybody. No shit posting, no mild trolling, no making fun of people, no doing satire, no none of that stuff. Now, just in case anyone didn't get the message, and this to me is the most chilling part of this entire article, right at the end, this is what CNN says. CNN reserves the right to publish his identity should any of that change, right? So he's apologized, he's deleted his posts, he's never going to do it again, blah, blah, blah. But CNN reserves the right to publish his identity should any of that change. We are watching, we are policing, and if you don't toe the line, if you make fun of us again, if you do anything in the exercise of your complete First Amendment right to free speech, if you do things we don't like of that we might find offensive, well, we're just going to publish your identity and let the chips fall where they may, because the feral violent leftists will now know exactly who you are and where you are, and welcome to almost never going out without looking over your shoulder and darting from shadow to shadow for the rest of your natural-born life. Now, to CNN, I can only say, I guess drunk with power and goaded into mad overreaction by Donald Trump's tweet of a GIF, how stupid do you have to be to do something like this? So Andrew Kaczynski, right, CNN, said, when he was accused of threatening this guy, or CNN was accused of threatening this guy, of blackmailing him, of extorting him, and said, well, you apologize, you deleted your post, you're never going to do it again, but if you do, we'll dox you. He said, FYI, Han A. Solo just called me, and basically said, I am in total agreement with your statement. I was not threatened in any way. Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Sure. You know, the guy whose livelihood and family and future I could destroy like that at any moment just called me, and he told me he totally agreed with anything that I had to say. Are you kidding me? CNN threatening a private citizen. Have you never heard of the name Gawker? I mean, where are your people with some understanding of the internet? Andrew Kaczynski also tweeted, Han A. Solo posted his apology before we ever spoke to him. He called us afterwards to apologize further. Now, that's Weasel Word 101, right? Because, okay, he posted his apology before we spoke to him, but not before you contacted him through email. If you said he posted his apology before we ever had any contact with him, that's one thing. He posted his apology before we ever spoke to him. Well, that's just a little bit different. And who knows what the content of that email was, although I kind of have the feeling we're going to find out at one point or another. Andrew Kaczynski also said CNN specifically chose not to reveal this guy's identity, and to say we threatened anyone is a total lie. Sure. Yeah, didn't threaten the guy at all, except for the fact, or the part where you said that you were going to dox him for exercising his right of free speech. Ah, yes, CNN, don't make any fun of us, or we'll publish your identity. How is that not crippling someone's constitutional right to free speech through threats and extortion? And this is the thing. Oh, my God, CNN, what have you done? What have you done? You don't get it. You don't get it. You think, oh, we're with this big, giant multimedia, multinational, multimedia, multi-billion-dollar corporation. Oh, he's just one guy in his mom's basement. You know, the cliche. He's just one guy. We're big. We're strong. We got an FCC license. We are the Godzilla. He's just a little ant. Come on. He's not one guy, CNN. He's not one guy. He's everyone on the internet. Everyone who enjoys making fun of those in power. Everyone who enjoys making memes. Everyone who enjoys shitposting. Everyone who enjoys mockery. So you think you're this big monster Godzilla beast in the room. You're Smog. He's just this little hobbit. No. Oh, man. There's poking the bear. And then there's sticking a fork in a dragon's eye. And then there's throwing a hand grenade into a supernova. And then there's the end of the universe. And somewhere way beyond that is this moment. What you have done. CNN, what are you doing? After these last 2 weeks of unbelievable escalating domino disasters, are you absolutely hell-bent on proving the circling the drain, death spiral, Pareto distribution, end times of the organization? Is this really what you want to say to the American people? Not only do we think you as Americans are, and I quote a CNN associate producer, stupid as shit, we will hunt you down and ruin your life if you make fun of us online. I mean, CNN doesn't have no clue. They seem to have no clue whatsoever. It's just this guy typing away, causing more problems. CNN doesn't have a fucking clue. They just attacked and threatened the entire anonymous internet. You know, the people who found the bike lock professor attacker and ended up with him getting arrested. The people who found Shia LaBeouf's flag because of little airplane contrails in the corner of the picture twice. Do you not hear the cry? Cry havoc and let slip the balls of war. I don't know. Isn't doxing someone or threatening to dox someone a little bit against Twitter's terms of service? Hashtag CNN blackmail, please help us out. It's astonishing. I don't know. Do they not hear the click of the bear trap that calls in the meme airstrike? See, if you make fun of CNN, they'll finally figure out how to do basic reporting. They'll track you down and they'll threaten to wreck your life if you don't obey their commandments. So shut the hell up and stop exercising your basic human rights to free speech. That's what happens if you make fun of CNN. But you see, if you attempt to assassinate the president, they'll shiver with excitement. They'll lick you up and down as a hero as they interview you. It's a very different situation then. And this goes to show that mainstream media is across the entire West, I believe. They're not in the business. They have no interest to inform you. They want to control you, you see. And this is a primary example of this. See, what CNN has shown is that they have the capability and the intelligence and the technology and the basic keyboard typing skills to track people down based on internet footprints, find out who they are. Hey, I wonder if CNN has ever done this with violent leftists. Or has that been left up to the people they're now cornering? Oh, man, you guys, you don't know. You'll find out, but you don't know yet. Oh, man. Now, Julian Assange has asserted that CNN just committed a crime, violating 135.6 of the New York Criminal Code regarding coercion. And I leave this here for your edification. You can look into it further yourself. A person is guilty of coercion in the second degree when he or she compels or induces a person to engage in contact which the latter has a legal right to abstain from engaging in, or to abstain from engaging in conduct in which he or she has a legal right to engage. Right? So in other words, don't post stuff which we find offensive on the internet, or we'll reveal your identity to the feral left. Right? Perfectly legal what he posted. I mean, so, yeah, he's got the legal right to post what he posts, to say what he says. And if you compel someone to refrain from engaging in contact, legal right to engage. And there's more to it. I'm just sort of giving you the highlights, right? So if they prevent you from exercising your legal rights by means of instilling in him or her a fear that if the demand is not complied with, the actor, CNN, or another will, 1, cause physical injury to a person, or, this is skipping a few down to 5, expose a secret or publicize an asserted fact, whether true or false, tending to subject some person to hatred, contempt, or ridicule. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? Well, I think for sure that if this person's identity gets out, I'm sorry to tell you, man, but you are going to face some potential for physical injury or danger. And, expose a secret or publicize an asserted fact, whether true or false, tending to subject some person to hatred, contempt, or ridicule. It seems to me, I'm no lawyer, but it seems to me, open and shut case of criminal behavior. We'll leave it for the courts to decide, and there are already murmurings that something like this may be underway. I mean, I know it's after hours. Don't you have a 24/7 general counsel you people could call to figure out this stuff, whether it's even remotely legal to threaten to dox someone for exercising their right of free speech? Oh, I'm telling you, it's not going to just be CNN too. Other legacy dino media corporations are going to report on this. They're going to take sides, and they're going to screw it up royally. I'm perfectly happy to tell them in advance that they're going to screw it up because, I mean, come on. All the competent people either aren't in the mainstream media or left the mainstream media years ago when they saw which way the wind was blowing, which is basically mainstream media going down the dinosaur dustbin of history. So, they think they're stepping on an ant, and then there's a giant shadow above them of what is coming down next. Hell will be empty because all the devils, the virtuous devils, will be circling CNN, because what have they done? What have they done? By attacking this guy, by threatening this guy, they have awoken a beast that will now strike relentlessly and endlessly. Because there are all these keyboard warriors out there, meme warriors, shit posters all over the world, who are sitting there saying, holy crap, what have I done? What have I said? What have I posted that CNN might find offensive, that they might be able to track me down? I can't delete everything. So CNN, they're going to say, all right, it's you or it's me. It's you or it's us. If this is how it's going to be, if you're going to track down people you find offensive and threaten to reveal their identity and destroy their lives, well, okay, it's on, CNN, and only one of us comes out of this intact. And this is going to be one of the great shows, one of the great conflicts of the early part of the 21st century. This is historic. So, my friends out there on the internet, please do it peacefully. Do it legally. Doesn't have to be nice, peaceful. Through language, you have all the power that you need in the creative genius of your fingertips. So I say, shit posters of the world, unite and fight You have nothing to lose but your memes.
Stefan Molyneux. And that was Stefan Molyneux again on YouTube. Check him out. Subscribe. Now, you know, you really do have a instance where by CNN doing that, and it's funny because I think this came more out of the BuzzFeed, crew that's working at CNN now. From all reports I've seen, there's a lot of talk about it coming, something like this seems to have come from or resemble what, BuzzFeed would have done. So it kind of makes me laugh because, a lot of the people that I've noticed that were into BuzzFeed at all, a lot of them were the keyboard warriors. But by doing this, you kind of you wage war on the trolls of the internet and the anonymous people on the internet. When you start tracking down people that criticize news organizations and government, both, and start putting or threatening to put their safety and their privacy and their lives in danger, even the ones that might like what you do because, well, it goes against the other side. When you look at how the internet operates today, one thing that the anonymous people and the trolls and a lot of the other people do is they stick together when it comes to someone trying to expose them and make their lives difficult, even though some of them do it on the internet. Their belief is keep it on the internet. You control me, I control you. Let's see who's the bigger troll. They're not showing up at your house, and you're not showing up at their house. Usually, if they're releasing personal info, it more than likely they're doing a operation on some type of corrupt entity, and they're trying to expose them. They're not just going, let's release this guy's information because he made a meme that I didn't like. They're going, hey, you like that meme? Watch, I'm going to make one to counteract yours. And, it's more of that internet back and forth. CNN basically declared war on, the trolling. And even the most amateur of troller that makes memes and criticizes things kind of recognizes that, going, oh, I put out memes that criticize, am I going to become a target now? So they're going to call out, even if they liked what CNN did, they're going to call that out. CNN seems to be losing credibility across the board, which I believe they should have a long time ago. But we're in the dinosaur media age, when it comes to mainstream media. They're dinosaurs. They're struggling to keep a place in the media sphere. That's why they've went far away from more journalistic stuff to more entertainment stuff. And I think a lot of it's blended itself. Even when they claim to be doing journalism, they're looking for views and clicks and going along with what they believe the country wants to hear and feel. And that's where the whole fake news thing comes into play. But you think in a struggling, sphere, they would have a little bit more respect for the internet and its power. But again, they are dinosaur. They're thinking about, our TV ratings. And what they don't realize is that means nothing in the internet world, and this could potentially take them down. Will it? I don't know. They've weathered similar storms. So them not making it through it, I don't see that happening. I do got one article. Sorry, give me a second here. Okay. Okay, sorry. Reason.com. What CNN's threat to docs? A Redditor tells us about the state of journalism. If you're going to create nasty memes to get attention, demand people give you credit for those memes and celebrate when the President of the United States shares one with his roughly 33 million followers. I have no sympathy for you. We're not a martyr. You're not a martyr for the cause of free expression, which I'm, believe me, I'm not claiming this guy as a victim. You do make memes. I think that you are kind of out there in the public sphere, but again, he was under an anonymous name, and that's not what journalism does when you start threatening. But it says here, there was a time when anonymity allowed Americans with unpopular and unconventional beliefs to make their arguments without fear of retribution. Today, the internet has created an environment that incentivizes people to create detestable messages meant to troll and harass. Then again, the story isn't really about online harassment or the Reddit user Han Solo. We'll just call him Han Solo. Who has taken credit for the creation of a GIF of President Trump body slamming a wrestler, which I feel the need to reiterate is fake violence, with a CNN logo imposed on his face. The story itself means little. This is about how places like CNN function these days, how it overreacts to everything the president does, how many of today's newsrooms give some people a pass and destroy others. The search for Han Solo began before anyone knew he was responsible for anti-Semitic or bigoted posts. CNN tracked down his identity because he had committed thought crimes, the worst of which was mocking CNN. The story was meant to tie a Trump tweet mocking CNN to a hateful meme maker and blow up. That's because news organizations have become obsessed with fighting Trump rather than covering him. For all the sanctimonious self-championing of the importance of journalism in the Trump era, stories like these have no real purpose. This piece didn't educate viewers on the underbelly of social media or the habits of the president or anything else. It wasn't an argument over ideas or policy. It wasn't entertainment. It was a story birthed from the hysterics that erupted over a silly meme Trump retweeted. What CNN has done is induce some random troll to grovel and apologize for his wrongthink. Even if we concede that there's a good reason to track down a meme maker on Reddit, why doesn't the network run the name? Without the name, in fact, there is no real story. CNN claims it kept the poster's anonymity to protect his safety. Is it saying that anti-Trump activists will hurt the man? Is it saying that there should be no repercussion for things we say? Is this protection afforded all Americans? Moreover, the piece itself and on the on-air personalities at CNN disputes the idea that his name was withheld to protect safety. It is clear that if Han Solo had responded to CNN by saying, "No, I'm not sorry, losers," he would have been outed. CNN is not, it says, quote here, CNN is not publishing Han Solo's name because he is a private citizen who has issued an extensive statement of apology, showed his remorse by saying he has taken down all of his offending posts, and because he said he is not going to repeat this ugly behavior on social media again, said a CNN piece. Should Han Solo ever revert to his nefarious meme-making ways, CNN reserves the right to publish his identity should any of that change. This is a threat. There is simply no other way for an open-minded person to comprehend the meaning of the line. I've read thousands of news stories and written a bunch of them, and I can't think of a single instance of a similar disclaimer. CNN has absolved the man of his sins for now. I guess if Han Solo does anything it deems ugly, the network reserves the right to put him in danger. Now, in a now deleted tweet, CNN's oft confused Chris Como asked, should CNN reveal name of Reddit user who made Trump wrestling video, had a lot of bigoted and hateful material on page and website. Let's chew on this question and assertion for a moment. For one thing, although Como happens to be correct in his case, I don't trust his definition of hate or bigotry. Moreover, our journalist standards contingent upon the target's political views. If Han Solo were to have the wrong opinion on same-sex marriage or affirmative action, would that be enough to ruin his life? If he sincerely apologized for these transgressions, someone should ask Como what the standard should be. It's important to remember that this entire conversation sprung from the hysterics surrounding a juvenile presidential tweet. Since the tweet, I have watched many journalists act as if Trump called the Gestapo into action. This only a few weeks after an out and loud progressive taking in by the frenzy of the day attempted to assassinate Republican congressional leadership. In a story most journalists drop quicker than the middling Trump Twitter troll. No, this is a First Amendment issue because one of the nation's most powerful journalistic institutions has the power to track down and ruin the lives of random Reddit users doesn't mean it should. And just because it can coerce apologies implicitly or explicitly doesn't mean it should. At the very least, it's an abuse of its power and a waste of its resources. And you can find that article at reason.com. And that one was titled, What CNN's Threat to Dox a Redditor Tells Us About the State of Journalism. And again, what they did, wasn't anything truly journalistic about it other than research. We found out, we tracked someone down that made a meme that we didn't like because it had our logo. That's like when they call, you know, entertainment news. Just, it's not really news because it's about entertainment. It's nothing that actually affects people. It's entertainment news. What's CNN even doing, bothering themselves about this? Because they're offended. Because they make up fake news. Now, again, I think that they kind of shot themselves in the foot, and it's potentially an end for CNN. I think mainstream media, because they're so expensive of a company to run, then they're falling off. So you got all that. It's really a bad place to shoot yourself in the foot. And I think it'll serve as a warning to the rest of the mainstream media, which I think that's why they're also ditching and kind of throwing CNN under the bus. It's because they realize what mistakes CNN made. Now, in the end of it, what's really going to truly happen to it? I think CNN is going to end up trying to do some major restructuring to try to save themselves. So, what are they going to try to create? I think that they're going to more than likely try to create a separate entity to slowly move towards. And they're going to probably recruit younger people and to try to make it look more authentically citizen journalistic. But behind the scenes, they're going to have the money behind them. And I think that we should watch what happens with CNN pretty closely to see what comes out of it. I might be wrong. They might just think that they're okay and implode themselves. It's really hard to tell, but I really think it's the end for CNN as we know it. And last article on this from the Blaze. A cartoon bear is beating CNN in the ratings. Viewers are choosing reruns of Hanna-Barbera's Yogi Bear over CNN. During the week beginning June 26th and ending July 2nd, Don Lemon and Anderson Cooper came 13th in the ratings, while the Smarter Than Average Bear and Connoisseur of Picnic Baskets clocked in at 11th on Nick at Night. CNN has found itself in repeated trouble as they commit numerous errors in content and judgment, from the hunting down of a private consumer who critiqued them with old footage of President Donald Trump. To reporters crafting false narratives on Twitter, to resignations over unverified stories, the news network is being tuned out in favor of reliable fare like Yogi. Chris Salcedo joked, "Watch us steal the ratings picnic basket" on today's Chris Salcedo show, making a reference to the Hungry Bear's famous line. He also explained that cable networks do not immediately falter financially because cable companies such as Comcast and Spectrum pre-purchase the programming, but we could be seeing the beginning of CNN's failure. Now, at the end of the day, a lot of these people will stay in the media sphere somehow. And again, that's why I think we should watch if they start falling apart, or if they, you start seeing people going over and starting a new network, to watch that pretty closely. But again, CNN as we know it, I think is going to be done. Okay, I want to play this one short clip here before we hit the end of the broadcast. Okay, here we go. And this one is titled, this from We Are Change, "What You Need to Know About the Soon-to-Be Most Powerful Man in America." So here we go.
Jason Burmis here for wearechange.org, and I'd like to take this opportunity to shine some light on a person who has gained a lot of power, prominence, and influence in our society over the last 20 years. And that person is Jeff Bezos, founder and CEO of Amazon.com. Now, before we get into what Mr. Bezos is currently up to, we should really take a look at his beginnings. Now, in 1994, Bezos traveled across the country into Seattle to discuss business deals in what would become the original Amazon.com. Now, in the beginning, Amazon was nothing more than a warehouse for books and then ebooks, and really took the idea of internet shopping to the next level. A lot of people didn't think that Mr. Bezos was going to be successful, as he chose to take financial loss after financial loss after financial loss in order to expand the business.
But the company losing even more money than they had estimated. The net income of the company losing, in spite of bringing in $19.3 billion, they lose $15 million in the quarter in terms of net income. That's a much worse loss than the year before, when the company lost only $7 million on $15 billion in revenues. A lot more in revenues, and the loss doubles to $15 million.
They're reinvesting constantly in the business. And if you haven't bought into this story, I'm just watching the stock down about 5% right now in after hours. If you haven't bought into that, then what exactly are you buying into?
Amazon is literally the biggest online arena in the world. You can get virtually anything from Amazon.com, whether it be toothpicks, high-end computer equipment, or even auto parts. Amazon.com has you covered. Now, on top of that, his service of Amazon Prime has cut into things like iTunes and Netflix with their music and movie service. So it would seem that Mr. Bezos has more influence than ever. But we really need to take a look at some of the other things that Jeff Bezos is invested in. For starters, in the early 2000s, he began work with a commercialized space company, which after failed launch attempts seems to be coming to fruition. In fact, Blue Origin, one of his aerospace companies that he's invested in, is set to have its first human flights sometime within this year. Whether or not that's successful, it just shows that Mr. Bezos is absolutely looking to the future and future technologies. Now, what may be most alarming about Jeff Bezos is the fact that in 2013, he acquired the Washington Post. Now, obviously, this is going to give him influence in the minds of many Americans across this country, as he is now very heavily invested in a media operation.
So is the Washington Post going to become a truly global newspaper?
Yeah, that's what we're working on. So we're working to become a national and to some degree global newspaper.
Now, some people may see this as a conflict of interest just based in his owning of Amazon alone. But what may be the most alarming is that Bezos took a $600 million contract from the Central Intelligence Agency in order to build them a cloud server. Now, of course, this $600 million should have no influence whatsoever on what's published in the Washington Post. But could there be a conflict of interest there? Absolutely. Now, with Mr. Bezos already heavily invested in future technologies, such as quantum computers, artificial intelligence.
I think natural language understanding, I think machine learning in general, artificial intelligence, it's probably hard to overstate how big of an impact it's going to have on society over the next 20 years. So it is big.
Drones, and even automation. We really need to keep an eye on what kind of propaganda he may be selling to the public through his media organization. He's a huge investor in D-Wave, the first commercial quantum computer company that is heavily invested in bringing artificial intelligence into our lives. We also have to take a look at the fact that most of Amazon's factories are completely automated, making us ever more obsolete.
Meet Amazon's newest holiday workers, the Kiva robots. At this fulfillment center in Tracy, California, more than 3,000 of them cruise the warehouse floor, helping employees fill millions of orders.
Now, obviously, as we move towards the future, this is going to be a continuing trend with somebody who has close ties to the CIA, owns his own media organization, and sells virtually everything through his online store. Jeff Bezos, we're watching you. And as always, if you like this report, please share it on social media. And don't forget to go visit wearechange.org. It's only through your financial support that reports like this are possible. Thank you very much.
Now, I am someone that's kind of kept an eye on what he does. I don't agree with everything he does. I don't agree, some of his connections, but I am a big Amazon user. I think that that is part of capitalism, being able to bring stuff to people for better and cheaper price, still good quality, take care of the customers when things go wrong, which they do, and they're able to offer services for a pretty good price. So, it's not always the cheapest. I do buy stuff from other websites and other companies, but it definitely is something that in the internet world has been groundbreaking, because, it was a constant investment to create something bigger and better, where it wasn't going, let's get to a certain point. We'll collect on that for a while. When that starts not working, then we'll start investing again till we get to a spot that works, and we'll kind of ride that pony for a while. Where, he constantly investing. It's got to get better. Got to get better. Got to get better. Got to get better. I'm not happy until it's better. Well, it's always can be better. Well, then we're going to keep going until, So that's where a lot of that that loss came from, because he constantly was making it better. That's good business. Don't like his ties with the CIA, making the cloud server, because that does kind of, make you wonder. But again, it could have just been a business move. There's things, again, I won't get into every little thing he's ever said that I agree or disagree with. But I will say that, what he did with Amazon, what was genius. And he made a very good online company. That's nothing to be ashamed of. I think, though, some business people just look at business. They tend to separate their personal beliefs or ideologies from their business. Some people don't, but some people do. Example of a company that really wanted to stick by their beliefs, their ideology, would be Hobby Lobby. At one point, Hobby Lobby went public, and then because they didn't like the direction, they wanted it a certain way. They wanted to keep a hold of their values and their beliefs in the company. They bought their company basically back. They took private ownership again. And so now they're able to run it the way they want. And they've stuck to their values and what they believe. And then you've got other companies that, listen, this is business. I might have my personal beliefs, but, this is business. That could have been what, his deal with the CIA, what, you need a cloud server built? Yeah, I can do that. I'll send you an estimate. That could have just been a business deal. So it's something that we should pay attention to, but it doesn't always point to something nefarious. Again, and I'm not being biased just because I like Amazon. If I really do think something nefarious is going on, believe me, I'll let you know. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't just keep an eye on, people that we spend our money with. Now, if I was a, owner of a company, I'm trying to grow to these great proportions, and I'm bringing in great revenue, what am I going to do? I'm going to turn around and invest as much as possible to get the company to a point where I'm like, we're light years ahead of our competition. Our competition is still relevant to a point, and we're still blowing them out of the water. Then I don't stop innovating. I might start, slowing down and not, ramping it crazy to the point where I start getting beyond my abilities as a company, which I've seen companies do that, where they want to get big and they don't have a great plan of getting big. What do? They expand, they get big, and then they go out of business because, well, they got loans and spent all this money only to have a larger version of what they had before, which wasn't making them a lot of money. Best time to expand when you're making money, when you're doing really well. You should be able to start off small and do really well. If you're not doing well, you're spending too much and not getting enough back. Cut your costs, raise your prices. Make sure you're putting out best quality or best service. And always innovate. Me personally, would I have made a deal with, the CIA to make a cloud server? Probably not. And again, that's where some people would have been like, listen, money's money. My problem is I know what the government does, and I don't agree with it. Therefore, I'm not going to help them further it along. If they choose to do these things, they're going to have to do it with someone else. Now, I think it'd be different if they're going, hey, we're going to phase out the EPA, but, could you at least make us a website that lists things to be, look out for? Things that, maybe a list of standards that would be a good thing for people to keep their communities, their businesses, and everything up to. Sure. But grow ability to coerce, spy, and torture, and wage war, and steal, and not doing it. But again, business deals can be business deals without being nefarious. And the cloud server could just be a cloud server without being nefarious, but it's just hard to trust government or covert organizations that kind of operate without oversight. Hey, I'm a fan of Amazon. I still shop Amazon. Again, if I find something nefarious about Bezos, I would stop. But you know what? One thing they've also been able to do is offer a lot of citizen journalists the opportunity to get a little, money and offer their listeners, their customers, their readers, the same great products that people usually try to find. Usually, people go on a search engine or, other websites, including Amazon, and they'll search for a product. Some companies offer, affiliations, and, when you have a company like Amazon where things are cheap, you can find anything. Great business model. I haven't had a shipping problem yet. It makes it really nice for citizen journalists and networks, including UCY, to partner up with companies like Amazon. And a shameless little plug here for UCY. We have a button on ucy.tv. It's down towards the bottom. When you click that button, it takes you right to Amazon. And when you shop, when you click those buttons, that's a partner button or, affiliate button. And UCY gets a little kickback without, raising your prices or making you pay more for shipping or, you pay the same price. Nothing is different on your end. And UCY gets, a little, it's, change, but it's a way that, you get something and you can also help support citizen journalists and alternative media networks out there. Because the alternative media and the citizen journalists, they're not working with that much money. Mainstream like CNN, they got a lot of money. Take care. Have a great weekend.